Bizarre Brain Comics. Hello, Gary here for Bizarre Brain Comics. He stalks the city at night. A dark, cowled and caped figure flittering through the sky, descending with vengeance upon evildoers. Who can I be speaking of? What being can that be? Well, it might sound a little bit like Batman, but it's not. It's the Owl. From Gold Key Comics, 1967. It's the Owl #1. Yep, Gary here for Bizarre Brain Comics. This is where I like to... Whoa, it's getting big. This is where I like to take a look at some older comics. Talk a little bit about the creators, the characters, and break down the stories and the art. Whoa! Okay, so let us take a look in the big book of knowledge. I couldn't really find a whole lot of background on this. This is the Owl from Dell Comics, then later Gold Key Comics. And we're going to be looking at issue #1 from 1967. And the Owl first appeared in Crackerjack Funnies #25 in 1940. After that title ended, he moved to Popular Comics in 42 and 43. And then, with the success of the 1960s Batman TV show, the follow-up to the Dell Comics, published by, then became Gold Key, they resurrected the Owl with Owl Girl as an overly campy iteration of the character. This version only lasted 2 issues. And he is a police detective named Nick Terry, and he dons cape and cowl to stop evildoers in the city of Yorktown. And he is a normal man with no superpowers and relies on his own fighting skills, utilizing a number of special gadgets such as his flying owl car and his glider cape. And he had a sidekick, Owl Girl, who was his fiancée. And she's a newspaper reporter, Belle Wayne. I wonder why that name. In the Gold Key version, Owl Girl was Laura Holt. And in 2008, Dynamite Comics brought him back with yet another new Owl Girl. I've never seen these. With another new Owl Girl. And I think this story that we're going to be looking at is written by Jerry Siegle. The best I could pull up was it was written by Jerry Siegle, who you may remember as being co-creator of Superman. And the artist, I don't know, and they don't have proper credits. It's just signed in on the splash page. It just says Seigle and Gill. So I presume the artist's name is Gill, something Gill. But I don't know who he is. His style is familiar. I know I've seen it, but I just don't know who he is. I've seen it in some other stuff, and I want to say I think I've seen his work in Bonanza way back in the 60s, but I am not sure because I'm drawing on decades old memory there. Just kind of looks like it. Well, let us go to the city of Yorktown and have a little camp romp with the owl. And there you can get a better view of that front cover. Get a look at the owl. That's issue number 1. And here is issue number 2. And you see we start off with line drawings for the covers, which is unusual for Gold Key at this time for adventure titles, because most of the adventure type books were painted covers, and the line drawings were for the humor titles, like the Disney and the Warner Brothers cartoon characters and stuff like that. But that may be because he kind of bridges the gap there between humor and adventure. But I think these could have been, at least for issue number 1, could have been a marvelously painted cover. And issue 2 is a little lacking. Would have been nice to have had a better view of the full figure of the owl. Okay, and issue 2 came, and this number 1 came out in 1967, and issue 2 was issued just a year later. So they had no regular publishing schedule for it. I presume these are 12 cents a piece. I can only presume that they came out with issue 1 and was kind of lackluster. But by the time that one was published, issue 2 was probably nearing completion. So they held off on it, and then when I had an opening in the publishing schedule, threw it out for that. Just to have something going out there, and maybe hoping a year later it would pick up a little better. But by then, Batman had almost run its course. Now, at this time, also, like I said, this is it really plays into the camp aspects of the Batman TV series. And even at the same time, the Batman comic was doing that as well, which is probably why one of the reasons why just shortly after the end of the TV series, they started DC started pulling back, really pulled back on the camp, going a little farther to the other side, bringing him back closer to his more grim and serious nature that he had when he was first published. And I have never seen anything of the Golden Age Owl, so I don't know how this compares to that. And I haven't seen the new revamped version or from the miniseries from Dynamite. I would like to, but it's kind of appropriate here in this first issue, bringing up the owl and he's up against these bird-themed gangsters. So let's take a little look, and we'll just go kind of briefly through the story. We have a little bit of background here, just on the inside cover, to let people know about the owl, because we don't know anything about him, and they're not starting at square one. He's already an established character at the beginning of this. So we have the owl roost, which is a mountain on the top peak of this mountain. He's got his owl car. and no one can resist the glowing gaze of the owl's hypnotic eyes. Under their orbicular spell, willpower vanishes. So it's not just his eyes. I think it's something to do with his goggles. An owl girl, the owl's ally in the fight on crime. Funny, because he's not Owl Man. Why is she Owl Girl? Or even Owl Woman? And the Owlmobile. Ducted fan, all-purpose vehicle that can hover silently in midair or glide smoothly over roads and water. So it's basically the Bat plane, the Batmobile, and the Bat boat all rolled into one. There we have a reasonable splash page to start us off with, showing Owl and Owl Girl. Why is she wearing spike heels? Owl Girl, yeah, right there, spike heels. They're low, not high, but still. And doing an admirable job of really cleaning up with these villains. So that's just to give you a hint of what's to come. And here it says Seigle and Gill. So the artist's name must be Gill. I don't know his name. It really reminds me a lot of Frank Bull, but it's not. For a little bit, I thought it might be his, but it's not him. And it opens up midnight, and there's a lot of hokey captions, kind of imitating the voiceover from Batman. It says, "All right, you can start cheering, pals, you admirers of the Golden Age comics who have been demanding that a certain costumed hero of that glorious era zoom into action once more, have triumphed. He's back again, and you've got him, the Owl, nocturnal nemesis of evildoers, whose feats of fabulous daring do while hunting down lawbreakers have made him the terror of the underworld. Thrill to his dazzling new exploits in this collector's item first-ish, when the Prince of Avengers, aided by the daring Owl Girl, hurtles into razzle-dazzle conflict with one of the wildest, kookiest conglomeration of bizarre villains you lucky readers will ever encounter in the pages of comics literature." Hyperbole much? Okay. Here in the city, a shipment of gems and diamonds being delivered to a jeweler, and in the middle of the night, less likely to be robbed. But here comes this helicopter. It looks kind of like has a bird head on it, and it snatches the whole damn truck, and it takes off. And then they drop some eggs. Eggs. Yep, but it's gas in those eggs. Knocking out the cops. And then here, though, woohoo, woohoo, siren type sound of the owl and his Owlmobile. Here's some cops there. Their car broke down, and they witness the event as the owl intercepts, uses his, and they use his black light to confound the evildoer. But with their goggles, infrared goggles, they can still see in that darkness. And of course, they could have colored that so to indicate that it was in darkness, but didn't do it. And he whacks this guy who calls himself the Vulture. And he jumps out. The Vulture just jumps out of the plane, out of the helicopter, leaving it him. And he's picked up by this guy, the Buzzard, on his rocket pack, and then releases a bag full of falcons, hawks, dropping bombs. And then threat of dropping bombs on the city keeps Owl at a distance while he's returning the stolen goods, and then they take off while Owl and Latchet, while he's gliding on his cape, hooks back up with Owl Girl, and they go back to their area, way up there on top of some mountain that looks like the depiction of the Great Wall of China on there for that road going up there. And there they are, and they find out. Of course, then the cops wind up taking credit for stopping the theft, and they doff their own costumes. And meanwhile, back in where the criminals roost, they find that the gang is a whole bunch of birdie people. They're all just wearing masks, and for his failure, the vulture is to be eliminated. But he bests his compatriots who are trying to claw him to pieces. So he has earned his right to remain in the gang, which is headed by the Eagle. And here we see he's a Owlman in his private identity as was his name, Nick Terry, who is a special investigator for the police. And a bird has flown in through the window as a parrot with a threat to the police chief's life. Then a blackbird flies in through the window, and only his quick thinking, Nick Terry saves the chief. They catch the bird, discover that his talons were covered in poison, which would have killed him. And then Terry leaves, and he calls, and it's just amazing. Nick Terry's face looks an awful lot like Wayne Boring's version of Superman in the face. And he drives by. Then, because she wrote a scathing article on the bird gang in her newspaper. This is Laura Holt, Owl Girl, and she sees out this window. Oh, there's this injured little bird, and it sings so sweetly. She's going to help it. As she reaches out of the window, the buzzard flies by in his jetpack and takes off with the girl. And yada yada yada, being followed by robot owls. Keeping track. Owls are destroyed. The other one is he finds to the hideout that they had been in with the owl tied up, and a note, something about crime with a clue for Birdville. There's no birds. Now, he finds it has his little mechanical owls out hunting, looking for any sign of Laura. They're programmed to look for her. After a bum steer, then he figures out that it's the bank of Dove's Landing, so bird thing, and they crack that open and get the safe, but they're being thwarted by the owl, and he uses his little laser gun and cuts the helo in two. They take off in their rocket packs. The mechanical owl save the girl, and then they figure out where they're going. They're flying back to Capistrano. Don't ask me why, because there's at a museum there's an exhibit with this giant golden bird thing. They're going to steal that, but Owl and Owl Girl have beaten them to it. Now this is a little bit. Now I haven't talked much about the art. Nice, clean, slick, very professional artwork, but very under-dynamic for a superhero type character. This is probably the most dynamic part right here. The drawing, I like the way that they're breaking the panel borders, giving them a little more dynamism, but it's just very lacking in dynamism compared to most Marvel or DC even at this time. But this is pretty good. As good command of the human figure, good visual storytelling. Here they are cleaning house, and then they using a gizmo that renders them paralyzed. They should have done that instead of fighting on them. And here he uses his goggle whammy and controls his will. While they're all frozen, they call the cops and leave a note that who these guys were, what was going on, with a note of just a card with an owl stamp on it. and that's fine. The I did like that they do have a pin-up version of the front cover. Now, the art is, I don't want to badmouth the artist at all. It's very nice, very clean, kind of abbreviated, and that's not necessarily bad in some of the background. This cityscape is pretty decent. Not as much detail as some artists, but it is like nighttime. And I think the machines are okay for the time. Reasonable cars. A slight cartoonish look to the faces of the people, kind of going with the humor aspect, and it's, I mean, it's fairly well written for the camp that it is supposed to be, and it's fine. Now here in the second issue, I'm not going to go into it, but I dislike the story much more. And of course, the same artist, same quality of artwork, maybe a little more finer work on the details and the backgrounds, and the visual storytelling is fine. It's just when it gets to this part here where they're stealing the faces off of Mount Rushmore. It's just, even for campy stuff, that's just downright stupid, considering there's no superpowers or anything like that. Now that one's a real nice face. That looks like it could be Dan Spiegel. But these are the only two issues that Goldkey had, and the only issues that I've got. And I never saw them when I was a kid at this point in time. I come across them separately years and years later. And it's okay for something as a something out of the mainstream, something a little different. But I wouldn't want to follow it on a month-to-month basis, even back then. But it's some fun, and it is enjoyable for just for 2 issues. Mostly as a novelty, yeah. It works best as a novelty, and I can live with that. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this. Please like, share, subscribe. Go ahead and leave a comment, and join us next time. And remember, comics are art.